Well, once again, welcome to an episode of the East Meets West PrimeLending podcast. My name is Al Velasco, and I am joined by a very special guest today, somebody that many of you know, but as I was thinking about this, Gene's been around long enough, and we've got enough new people in the company that maybe not everybody knows the legend himself, Gene Lugat. So, Gino, welcome to the podcast. This is probably one of the most exciting things you've done in your career, I'm sure.
I'm excited to be here, Al. Thanks for having me on the show.
Have you just been waiting for an invitation?
I've been watching the Buffalo, East Meets West Buffalo, and I've been wanting to be part of the herd. So, yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Well, here you go. I'm really excited. So, a number of episodes ago, we talked, really going back to the beginning, the premise of this podcast is really quite simple, is that we just really believe we got some amazing people working at this company, and some of them's face and names are well known and people hear from them all the time. But quite frankly, we have some amazing people that are just doing the Lord's work every day in the branches and serving their communities, and they have amazing stories, and we wanted to find a way to elevate those stories. And my friend, I would put you in that category of being somebody that works at PrimeLending that has just kind of led an amazing life, full of success, many struggles, a lot of things to overcome, and you're a fabric of what makes PrimeLending great. And again, you're one fabric, but you're one of many. And so I'm excited to maybe reintroduce you to some extent to some people. But again, as I noted earlier, with many people, they haven't had a chance to meet you and have conversations with you and understand who you are. And of course, this is coming at a time that you're transitioning into a new role. I should say an old role. You were the East
Back
Divisional.
To the future.
Yeah, you were like the East Divisional when the dinosaurs were roaming the country.
There was no East.
Yeah. And now fast forward, here you are in a familiar role. But certainly it's been many years since you've been in that role. So we're all excited. I know I'm excited to have you side by side in the trenches every day. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But so let's just start with a little bit of background. So you're an interesting dude from the standpoint that you've been in the mortgage business for 40 years. You've been a chairman of the MBA Residential Board of Governors, MBA Executive Board. What that really means is you're somebody that has influenced greatly the MBA, which is an organization that represents all of us. So whether you're a processor or a branch manager or a loan officer, the advocacy that the MBA provides, especially in this environment, and especially over the last 5 years, is really critically important to all of us, although we all have certain levels of awareness as to what the MBA actually does. It's, it's obviously a very influential and important part of our business. You're a Housing Wire Vanguard winner. Probably most important, you were a great football player at Shepherd University, and you're in the Shepherd University Hall of Fame. And I know that that's a passionate part of your life.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, perfect.
Tomorrow.
And probably more important and probably most remarkable is that you and your wife, Chris, have been married for 38 years, and she's put up with you that long.
Crazy.
But you guys are high school sweethearts, right?
Love of my life. Best partner, best friend, and yeah.
So amazing.
My strength. Definitely my strength.
Yeah. Well, all of us that have had a chance to be around you guys, we certainly know that. So let's just start with, how'd you get into mortgage banking?
Sure. It was a great opportunity for me. I graduated from college, went to work for the defense industry for a short period of time, and a neighbor was in mortgage banking. I had no idea what it was, but he drove hot cars. He had a beautiful wife. He was young. He lived in our neighborhood, and we had been talking, and I had an opportunity to get a chance to intern there at Maryland National Bank, which was a large, prominent bank in Maryland. And I enjoyed the opportunity to get to know what the industry was. And he challenged me to read the regs, the regulations and guidelines while I was thinking about making a move. And I joined in 1984, and I've never looked back. It was just tremendous opportunity, and I really adapted to the sales side of it, understood what developing relationships were, and it was a tough time in the industry because when, we talk so much, Al, about interest rates. I got in when my mother actually cried because I told her I was getting into mortgage banking, and she said, "You realize interest rates were at 17%. I said, "Yeah, but Chip said this was the best time to get in the industry because everybody else is getting out." So there it is. So I came at a time where it was quite challenging, but that was that. So
And
I learned to swim
right.
in rough waters. I learned to swim in rough waters.
Chip was right.
So
it probably was
good.
a great time. I can kind of relate to that. I was thinking the other day when I started as a loan originator, back in the early 90s, I think interest rates are probably around 12%, probably
Sure.
double digits for sure, right? And
Yeah.
it's funny because back in that day, I don't remember having a lot of conversations around how high interest rates were, right? I mean, it was, you were selling something and you were out selling it, and the price was the price. And you just did your very best to position your rate sheet, the best that you could. And of course, I'm sure you've kind of had some of the same experiences I had. Is that back in the day, we were out passing out rate sheets, right? That was kind of what we did every day. Is we'd go from real estate office to real estate office with a rate sheet in our hand and drop it off, and talk about a complete waste of time about 95% of the time.
Well, I got educated. It was funny. I came back after one of my early days and I told my boss, my car was like a flyer delivery machine. I really thought that was my job. And one day he asked me, I said, I put out, 1,000 flyers, whatever. He said, "That's great. How many realtors did you talk to?" Well, wait a minute.
Hey, what's the point, boss?
Wait a minute. Wait a second. That doesn't, that would stop me from stuffing mailboxes. And really got a great education about what was really valuable in an effective sales call was developing a relationship, letting people on, getting to know people, finding out a little bit about them, finding about their background. What are they? Who are they? And how do they sell? What do they make connections with? And if you're lucky enough to get somebody to stop and talk to you back then, that was a great way to build into the relationship. Today, there are so many different ways to connect with realtors, but the traditional method of walking into an office with a rate sheet, my brother, is, as you know, long gone. It's by like the way of the dinosaurs. It's gone.
So let's stay on this.
And they change every 20 minutes today anyway.
Yeah. So let's stay on this for just a minute, because I think there might be something here. So obviously, the way that we cultivated business relationships were very different, back when you and I were on the street originating mortgages. The goal was the same, but, we had very limited resources, for lack of a better word, to actually get in front of, a real estate partner or a builder or whatever your preferred choice was for referral sources, right? But let's talk about what's the same.
As much as things change, they remain the same. You're right.
Right. Yeah.
I think people want to do business, people with no trust and respect. I still think the relationship side of the business is preeminent, right? For those of us who have had the opportunity to be in the business for a period of time, you've got probably 10 to 12, 15 core referral sources that you are partners with, that you develop this long relationship with. And it's based on those three things. One of the things I shared with my group, we were in a Baltimore meeting last week, and I said, again, things, as much as things change, they remain the same. The one thing that's, that really comes back to me is he who owns the customer is king, right, Al? So when we think about it today, how do we get to the customer? How do we develop a relationship, rapport, establish credibility with a customer? There are so many ways today with NAR and with the changes that are going on. It continues to evolve about how we connect with the consumer. Certainly the internet, all the options that the consumer has. But still, it gets down to the fact that, we want to be that partner within the realtor relationship, the builder relationship, the financial planner relationship. And it needs to be built more upon not just the transactional value of your interest rates, but the ability for you to solve problems, define net benefits, tangible benefits to the consumer, despite interest rates, with products, programs, terms. the development, all of that to establish rapport and establish the customer connection hasn't changed. It's just how that process evolves changes
Yeah.
today.
So I think
And
the key part of
I think
that,
it's
and
a go ahead.
no,
Mhm.
I just think the key part of that, and I was actually, on a call yesterday with our group up in the Pacific Northwest, and um, I tried to touch on this. I'm not sure that I completely hit the bullseye, but um, when it's all said and done, when you talk to loan officers, branch managers that are successful in this business, not only those that are at PrimeLending, but those that work at other companies, um, the fact remains that people that are good at cultivating and building relationships and building trust do really great in this business. And it really
Sure.
has less to do about interest rates and products and resources, tools, and certainly all those things play into one's ability to be successful in this business. But I think sometimes uh, when we show up to work in the mortgage business, the first thing we think about is all the obstacles that we have in front of us. And we think about maybe sometimes the things that we don't have as opposed to the things that we do have. And it comes down to mindset. And what I was sharing yesterday was that you can have all the tools, you can have all the skills, you can have all the brains and all the smarts. Um, but if you don't have hunger and it doesn't burn in your belly to get out there and to win, you're probably never going to be elite, right?
No
And
doubt.
I
No
think that
doubt.
that when I think of Gene Lugat, you know, you've got a lot of amazing traits and skills, but at the end of the day, like you've got hunger. Like you hunger for greatness. Sometimes I think you're crazy. I've shared that with you before, right? Because and I think it goes back to your old athletic days, right? At not only at Shepherd, but you're a athlete and you like to win. And when
No
you
doubt.
don't feel like you're winning, you have this hunger that just kind of gnaws at your soul that says, "Hey, you know, I gotta be better." Um, and I think sometimes we discount um, the fuel that hunger can provide us in this business because it's critically important. I don't
Well,
know if you have any
one of
thoughts on that.
yeah. Well, thanks. And at the end of the day, one of the great things about mortgage banking is we're surrounded by hunters. We're surrounded by people that have a passion, not only for excellence, but it's passion to connect with people. And in our game, the scoreboard's measured by volume and units and all those things, and they're critically important. Of course they are, because they drive revenue, they drive our in the rest of our industry. But clearly, the one thing is in this is the opportunity for you to be successful with your own skill sets and the things that you bring to the table, your background, your uh, basically your competitive nature, as you may be defined by different things. Um, but one of the things that's consistent is, in my opinion, is that you have to get up and be, in this business today, you've got to be able to adapt and change and show agility, because excellence is defined in different ways as we move forward in the business. Um, you said something about, the maintaining of customers or developing the customers. I think today is as important it is to be competitive, to go out and make contacts. It's the ability to maintain those relationships over time. I think that we see the industry continue to evolve with AI and trigger leads, which hopefully we'll touch base a little bit on the MBA side. But, we see the things that we're competing with servicers, and people, again, I think come back to people that they feel are going to work hard. They're committed. They do have that passion and that hunger to be great. And they want to be around that. And they sense, if you have it when you're speaking to them on the phone, that you're committed to their success. And if you can do that, I always say what athletics and what I think some of my background may be is, if you're a great athlete, you can be a great athlete. But do you lift people around you up? Are people better around you? Do you help people around you? Do you lift those around you? Do you make people feel, and most importantly, that they're important to the conversation? but most importantly, that you're committed to the successful outcome. I think all those things kind of package into mortgage banking, and then throw the competition in it just makes it great.
Yeah. Well, let's segue to the MBA piece, because I do think, again, regardless of what your role is, in prime lending or in the industry, we're a highly regulated business. And that's one thing that's very different than when you and I were out on the streets.
Sure.
The business is more regulated now than it ever has been. And the work that the MBA does on behalf of all of us, and your personal involvement and impact on that, I think is really important. And I don't want anybody's eyes to glaze over when we start talking about the MBA, but just touch on maybe a couple things that are happening right now that I believe are pretty significant. You mentioned trigger leads that I think it's important for everybody to have a general awareness over, as we continue to try to navigate through, a complex environment.
Well, a great segue, with trigger leads, but, the MBA for me has been an opportunity for me to give back to the industry. The last decade, I was previous president of the Maryland MBA in 2000, but really the MBA, the national MBA, where we're really shaping and sculpting and reacting and responding to policies and the changes that go on in Washington. And with every 4 years, we have a new administration. Things can change at the CFPB and certainly FHFA, and they're all the directors of what we do every day, how we treat our customers, how we communicate, TRID rules, Dodd-Frank, all the things that we deal with today that we just think are commonplace. I was around and participated in shaping and helping sculpt that so that we could continue to deal with customers in a professional fashion and be able to provide services that we do. And not always, we don't always win, but sometimes we just shift a little bit of if you will, the train going down the hill just a little bit to get where we want to go. As chairman of the Residential Board of Governors this past year, I've had a great opportunity to chair into two things. One was repurchase demands coming back from the agencies for fear of companies going out of business and them getting stuck with bad loans. Unfortunately, that was a big impact to our industry, and we came out of this year, I think, much better position for 2025 with the agencies and a better understanding. Of course, this is on the doorsteps of, I think everybody on the call today understands that in the next 30 days, things will be redefined in Washington, and we'll see how things play out to see where we head. But certainly the direction we're going right now and what we hope to accomplish before that change is the trigger leads. Bill 4981, which has bipartisan support in Congress. We know it as the trigger lead, but it's tied to the defense spending bill that needs to be passed in this Congress, and we're hoping it stays inside of that. It's an omnibus bill that we think is going to get done. We hope it doesn't get cut in the way that they kind of cut things in and out of these bills, but because it has so much support, again, bipartisan support, that they want to rid the consumer of this. Everybody recognizes this. We found ways to work around,
right, Gino? It's a
well,
scourge.
a scourge, the scourge. Or the bane of our existence is as loan officers, because of course we are identified as the problem, right? We're the ones who caused this to occur. And we can warn our customers, we can tell them what's going to happen. But the great thing about it was when I testified in front of Congress or in front of FHFA, we were able to communicate. And one of the aides for Sandra Thompson, the director of FHFA, held up her phone and said she had applied for a mortgage 2 days before this meeting, which was a year ago, and said that here's what's happened. And she had over 75 messages, texts, and phone calls on her phone. And it kind of gasped the director and the rest of the table. It was a real perfect opportunity, and this person played a beautiful role unsolicited.
That's great.
We're very appreciative of the opportunity. We're hoping that because of our group here, our Ma Action campaign here out with PrimeLending, we have over 700 members of the company now are actively engaged. We're out there hitting our buttons, and it's an easy way to communicate with Congress, to have your voice heard. And I'm just proud to represent us. And my last days are in 2 weeks. You'll be with me out in Denver, where I pass the gavel. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, that'll be fun to be there and to watch you cross the finish line. So let's stick on trigger leads just for a minute. So practically, let's assume that the bill doesn't get watered down and it passes as it's authored currently, what should
Sure.
the expectation be for the industry that once it's approved, when do you believe we'll actually start seeing changes to how trigger leads are being used?
Well, I think once it's approved, there'll be an implementation stage and an implementation period, and we're hoping that it's very quick. And as in other bills, there's less legislative aspect to this, other than making this a defined outcome, meaning that the lender that originates the loan, right, with a borrower approval, will stay in and be able to communicate with the borrower post the closing or settlement of the transaction openly. The borrower can always opt out of that if at some period down the line they don't want that. The servicer will also have that same privilege. So the two people that maintain are the originator of the loan and the servicer of the loan. And that was really important for us, that the servicers stay involved because of their need to retain customers, and we're going to be continue to have the opportunity as originators to communicate with our borrowers, continue to provide them with updates, information, and create, again, maintain and keep a relationship with them in the transaction. So those were the two carve-outs, Al. Timing is probably the first of the year would be our expectation at the latest, and maybe even before that if we can get this thing done in November.
That's great. Well, as I noted earlier, advocacy is critically important, for our business right now. And it's been, I think, a real benefit to PrimeLending that we have one of our own, in Washington, not only advocating for all of us, at PrimeLending, but for the industry as a whole. And so I know that's something that you've been passionate about, and it will be fun here in a few weeks to be with you out in Denver and see you kind of wrap up your term. So let's in our last minutes together transition a little bit into what I think is going to be really rich. So not to put any pressure on you.
Okay.
But, we've talked a lot since we started this podcast about, the fact that the industry has been difficult. It's been hard, right? Everybody listening here has probably had challenges over the last year and a half, 2 years, whether you're somebody that is in a operational role and you're seeing production dwindle and you're worried about whether or not you're going to have a job tomorrow, and you've got loan officers and branch managers that are out there and they're fighting hard to win every deal in very competitive environments. And, their number one priority is to, care for their family and be able to provide for their family. And there's just all kinds of stresses that anybody in the industry has really, it's been our reality here for such a long period of time. And we're certainly hopeful that we're entering a, environment that's going to be a little bit more positive, but we've all had to overcome challenges, right?
Sure.
And, you are an expert, not because you chose to, but because sometimes life just throws things at you that you could never expect, right? And you've certainly had many challenges that you've had to overcome personally here over the last, 10 or so years. And I've had the privilege of traveling with you through some of that stuff. And frankly, there have been some really difficult days to not only watch you battle through it, but, just to see you kind of keeping on, right? And so I think you're an expert. And again, whether or not you want to be, I think your life has just created the fact that you've been given an opportunity to become an expert at dealing with trials and challenges. And so talk to us a little bit and provide a little wisdom and insight. What have you learned? What have you learned from everything that you've gone through? Because I'm sure you could probably go on for hours, and we probably only got about 5 minutes. So give us your best shot.
Well, it is something that I try to keep as private as I can, but it's in our teammates here and everybody on the call. It's, it was a journey for me, and, 3 times cancer patient. I'm a survivor. There's no such thing as defeating any of it. But at the end of the day, It's not it's not the obstacles or certainly the challenges that occur in life. It's how we respond to them. I think through athletics and through my life, it's been part of that. Some of it's ego, not wanting people to know that I'm not doing well, and trying to keep a front up at all times, which is why having great partners is pretty important to that. But everybody on this call deals with adversity, Alan. We've all had adversity in our lives. It's just part of living. These are just factors that are a little more visible, or some things that are outside of our control that I dealt with. But as we all continue to find our way challenged by things, I think, again, how we try to keep those things in perspective, how we surround ourselves with people we love, how we try to find positivity in the day and in the moment, and keep that to the forefront, and not so much dwelling on the things that are affecting us or impacting us, but maybe how we can overcome them and move forward. So it's kind of just a game on attitude, which is something that's come out of my mouth a lot.
Well, it's just showing up every day, regardless of your circumstances, and just being committed to kind of, getting to the next day.
Right.
But I think a part that you didn't touch on is that you're a cheerful warrior too, which is what I just appreciate about you. And one of the things that I've personally learned from you is that you can choose to be cheerful through difficult circumstances. And that doesn't mean that you're that way all the time, but your overall mindset is one that is incredibly positive, right? And I'm sure that you probably had to make a choice, to have that cheerful attitude, even though things sometimes can be difficult.
Thanks.
So keep smiling.
I'm trying, and I think for all of us that are on this call, you guys have been doing all of this. It's finding happiness in the day, joy in the moment. And again, from us, I always say everything's like a sport, and that's, maybe shallow existence that I live in, but, you have defeats and it's the opportunity to overcome them. And it's the next day to get up and be able to play the game again. Right. And that's the joy of this business, is the next deal is right out in front of you. You may not always see it, but it's out there. And when it's out there and you seize it and you win and you find winning, or you find you're able to service somebody, how powerful do you feel when you're heading back? Right. How powerful do you feel when you hang up the phone and you're able to impact somebody in a positive way? And that kind of rejuvenates us and puts the past over adversity in perspective. Yeah. So game on.
Well, my friend, you're a treasure, and I am really looking forward to partnering with you at a higher level here as we kind of go forward with our new structure at PrimeLending, and
lots of changes.
Lots of changes. Hopefully our goal is to be together more often in the year to come, and I'm really excited for those folks that maybe haven't had a chance to meet you personally, if they get a chance to do that. You are a treasure. It's a privilege to have you on the team. And I'm just grateful of your willingness to come on today and share a little bit about the industry with us, but probably more importantly, just share a little bit about your heart, because I know that's what drives you. So as you like to say, Mr. Gene Lugat, game on. And hopefully we'll see you again.
Celebrate the day.
That's right. Hopefully we'll see you again in future episodes. So just a reminder to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you want to listen to podcasts. And as always, we're looking for recommendations for other amazing people that work for our company that we might want to highlight. So if anybody pops to your mind, or you have somebody that you're going shoulder to shoulder with in the trenches every day that you think deserves a little bit of spotlight, please pass their name on to us. So Gino, until next time, have a great week, and game on, brother.